thing you want to be known as is an expert in terminating. Right? And yet, about this time last year, or maybe it was in the summer, Alberta Labour contacted me out of the blue and said, hey, we have this really great publication thinking about layoffs. And we'd like you to come to Medicine Hat and conduct a full-day workshop. Because in Medicine Hat at that time, there had been many organizations dependent on oil and gas. And they were hemorrhaging in layoffs and terminations. And they really wanted to bring some skills and techniques and things to think about before you lay people off, and when you do have to terminate people, how to do it with grace, with dignity, and with respect. And so what I've brought to you today through the talent pool and PCBO is a 1.5 hour workshop. That's a condensed version of it. And by all means, I've brought some additional resources from employment standards, Alberta Labour, etc. So feel free to tackle me at the break. For those of you who don't know me, for the last 20 years, I've been a learning and development specialist, and I run a human resources consulting company here in Edmonton. For the last 10 years, we've been incorporated. Now, it's really interesting because I often get called in to help with terminations. In fact, I'm going to do one next week with the CEO of a small business with a key position. And it's not like I went to school and said, oh, I want to become an HR person so I can terminate people. But I want to make sure that we do it well, and that that person understands what's going on in the process, and that we minimize risk for the organization. So let's begin. How many of you, quick show of hands, have ever done terminations? Oh, most of you. Okay, fabulous. Have any of you done layoffs? So large-scale layoffs? When I say large-scale, more than 50, because then you have to write to the government and let them know. Okay, fabulous. So what we're going to look at, there are sort of 3 big learning objectives that we're going to cover in the next hour and a half. What should you consider before you begin to downsize your workforce? So if you're thinking of layoffs, especially if it's more than one position, if you have to do the inevitable, how do you do it effectively and with respect while complying with law so that you stay out of the courts? And really, quite frankly, that's where I like to spend my time, is to make sure that we're considering all the human rights factors as well as employment standards and proper severance, etc. And so we work very closely with legal counsel to make sure that we keep our clients out of the courts, because it's huge. Well, you know, it's expensive and it's stressful for all the parties involved. And then finally, so once you do the layoff or once you do the termination, how do you keep I call it the survivors on the island, motivated and engaged? And so that's where there's a nice correlation between the letting go and the grief process to terminations and layoffs, to what Claudia is going to spend some time with you, because there's an unintended consequence that if we don't do it well, we create problems in the workforce. So, with that said, here's what I'd like you to do. Think about the number one challenge, the thing that scares you about terminations or layoffs, or that you find most difficult, you personally, when you think about having to do a termination. Turn to your partner, introduce yourself, and share what is that one most important fear or challenge. And I'm going to eavesdrop. So, introduce yourself to your partner, share your number one challenge, and then I'm going to ask you to share with a large group. Go for it. That's why we're like, It's just a simple Okay, that's time. So, volunteers, what makes you lose sleep at night when you have to do a termination? Give me one. Go for it, Jen.
Making sure that people are aware and it's been communicated that it's economy or something like that, and not them personally. One of the things that I found when we were going through our layoffs, right up to the point where I was laid off, was there was a significant change in leadership. There was no communication as to the economic impact on the company, although people were aware of it. But there was also no communication as to the strategy of taking the company out of this type of position.
Mm-hmm.
So people were literally terrified, and a lot of the people were long-term employees. We're talking in excess of 20 years that were laid off, and there was no communication.
Thank you. How about the rest of you? What do you find most challenging?
So I'm a director of operations, and then I have an executive director. So she's the one who's been doing all of the terminations if we have any that need to be done. But the reason that I struggle with doing it, because sometimes it's my staff, is the background that I come from, human service background. I used to do financial counseling with people. I struggle with the fact that I know the impact of what it's going to be on somebody's life. And even if that person should be terminated for a variety of reasons, I struggle with that personal connection because I know that if I'm terminating you, you're not going to get a paycheck, and if you don't get a paycheck, there's ramifications to that, and so I feel extreme guilt.
Yes, thank you. Because that's a challenge when you've got a relationship with some of these folks, and now you have to deliver this really unfortunate news. How do you disconnect? And quite frankly, I consider myself lucky because as an external consultant, when I'm brought in, I don't have those relationships. And so I'm about process, I'm about doing it with dignity in a way that all the parties benefit the most in an unfortunate situation. But many of you have to do it yourselves, and these are people you've worked with, right? So that's the hardest part for many of us, is separating the personal from the process. So let's take a look at, and by the way, in your folders, you should have a handout with both the slides as well as some exercises that I'm going to get you into shortly. But before you consider layoffs, so there are two things. We're looking at layoffs because maybe your funding model has shrunk, and so you just can't keep good staff on, and so you got to figure out who do I let go versus terminating somebody for performance issues. So before you consider laying off, you're going to assess the cost. You're going to look at the direct costs and the indirect costs. So what do we mean by that? Well, when you're calculating the numbers of the direct costs, yes, you're looking at what the severance is going to be. And of course, if you've got very long-term employees, those severance packages can be very rich because they've been there a long time. Benefits continuation, that does cost your company some money. And usually, at least the friends that I know that have exited a company, they get all their teeth done, they get their eyes checked, they take care of their benefits because it's going to run out. And so it does drive the costs up a touch. Accrued vacation, outplacement fees, and so on. What are the savings? Well, over the long haul, the salaries and benefits. And it's funny because we often think in black and white, binary. They're either here or they're not here. And so we're just looking at hard dollars. But what about the indirect costs? The poor morale, the lower productivity as people start to take a step back engagement-wise and get worried about their jobs. A client of mine that I've worked with for many years went through 3 rounds of layoffs a few years ago, the nature of their business, and they divested some assets, etc. And so when they did their first round, everybody saw that kind of coming. The second round, people started to get a little nervous, and then the third round, because there was a huge wave, the morale was so low. Because you can't promise that there won't be a 4th round, but you're thinking, no, it's probably, I think we're done now. We're going to stop the bleeding. So you think about resignations and lawsuits. I was actually meeting with a colleague of mine yesterday for lunch, And the nature of their business, obviously, I can't tell you what it is because you would know it instantly. They can't really keep staff. She was away overseas for 1 week and 4 people gave their notice because the nature of the industry that they're in, they're going to become obsolete shortly, right? And when I say shortly, in the next 3 years. And so how do you then, as leaders, keep people motivated? So what are the advantages? Bless you. So when you think about, these are all considerations that I ask managers and business owners to consider before they lay off, because there are so many other options. Let's take a look at some of the other solutions. So we have some manufacturing clients, and so they start to think lean, they start to look at their inputs and outputs, and are there opportunities where they can reallocate great skill sets and make their operations more efficient, and then utilize those resources to maybe go find new funding dollars, like new revenue streams. Number 2, to consult with employees. We had a client years ago in the home building industry. And if you remember in 2007, we were just living in a bubble. We were on high, and then 2008, boom. Yeah, so they were home builders, and home builders are extremely susceptible to this. I give their COO huge credit. He's an amazing human being. He actually went to his staff and said, look, we have some options. We can terminate people, we can lay people off. We don't know if we can call you back or not. Or we can do furloughs. Do y'all know what furloughs are? Furloughs, so what are furloughs? I know the U of A had to do them not too long ago.
Sorry. I'm not sure. Sorry.
Who knows what a furlough is? It's basically when you force employees, and this was also to the academic faculty, like a friend of mine is a professor in the engineering, and he actually had to take a furlough. Instead of working a 5-day work week, as if professors ever work 5 days a week. I mean, they work 7 days a week and more. But technically, you're getting paid for 4 days a week, not 5 days a week. And so it's forcing their salary budgets to go down. So they're working less on the books, so they're getting paid less on the books temporarily until they can get new funding levels. So they actually consulted the employees, and back to the home builders, they did this, and they all decided to take a 5% cut because they didn't want to lose any of their friends. So you see, that was their choice, not management's choice. Yeah. So you can reduce benefits and perks, you can reduce pay, but of course, I'm gonna say this a couple of times, if you do decide to reduce people's pay to stay out of the courts, you need long notice periods. I have a client in Turkey, I have a client that's global that I've been training with in Turkey, and it was amazing. Their engineers said, you know what, we know that the revenue stream is tough right now in oil and gas, and they actually stuck their hands up and volunteered because to take a major cut temporarily, so they didn't have to let go of working with some of the amazing talent on the team. You don't see that very often, but that's a sign of a pretty tight team. So when we were in Medicine Hat, we actually had a representative from the federal government who came in and talked about work sharing. And so there's some subsidizing. You can actually apply for work sharing subsidies. So if that's an option, I can certainly hook you up with a website to get you more information around that. How many of you have gone through hiring freezes? Yeah, it's very common, right? That's one way to control costs. And then we can look for voluntary resignations and attrition through, retirements, et cetera, and just not fill those vacancies. What else have you seen in terms of not letting people go, but looking at creative alternatives to manage costs?
Vacation hours, just ask them to do vacation.
Take their vacation
Some
hours.
have, especially in oil and gas, because we were so busy.
Yes,
People just had weeks and weeks. Vacation.
brilliant.
Yeah.
Great example. Anything else? Okay. So I didn't want to spend too much time on this. I do want to get you into a real case study. If you turn the page, this is actually a case study that came to us. We had to help with this termination. I won't tell you when, and just so you know, the names of the people have been changed and some of the details have been changed to protect innocent. But this is a real situation, so I'll tell you what the outcome was. But before we do that, here's the scenario. Renee and friends. Renee is a 38-year-old single mother who has worked for your company for 18 years in various roles over time. She is currently employed by your organization as a senior estimator, and although it's sometimes challenging to balance her home and work priorities, she's had a pretty consistent track record. She comes to work on time, she meets deadlines, sometimes even works through her breaks, stays late, or takes work home in order to make sure the job gets done. And she has reasonably good quality outputs. Her results are not stellar, but average. So she's in that 60%. 20% are great, 20% are not great, and 60%. So she's in that 60% of staff. Renee, however, is not known for being a strong team player. She's known as being a bit toxic, even seen gossiping with others and stirring the pot when she is unhappy with management's decision or doesn't get her way. With the downturn in the economy, you have to make tough decisions about your workforce. You have decided you want to let Renee go because you have to make some cuts to staff headcount anyway, and you think morale might improve if you start with Renee. You're thinking of holding the termination meeting in 3 weeks' time, so you can prepare. Now here's something else to consider, because these are never easy. By the time we get called in, they're always complex. Renee is friends outside of work with Josie, the payroll clerk. You're pretty certain that as soon as Renee is terminated, she will call Josie and ask for her help in finding out information. You know there is a good chance Josie will accommodate Renee's request for information, even though it would breach company protocol. You can't be sure, but you don't want to risk it. Although Josie is an adequate employee, you're thinking about letting her go too. She has only worked for you for 2 years and is in her late 20s, so she's younger. In fact, you have already been interviewing for her position and getting close to making an offer to her replacement. You need to prepare for the termination meetings. So, what I'd like you to do is discuss in your table groups, what are the things that you're going to consider? Are you going to terminate both of these people? If so, how are you going to prepare for that? If not, who would you terminate and who wouldn't you terminate? Anything goes. I'd like you to actually get your heads around what you're going to do in this scenario, because this actually came to us from their CEO. He said, this is what I want to do. So you're now the HR manager, and you've got to act on this. Okay, so 4 minutes. Let's start with 4 minutes at your table, teams. So my question. Okay, that's time.
6 months before, they told us a couple of nights.
I'm going to ask for the different table groups. Did you have consensus about what needed, like, would you all terminate both of them? Yeah? Okay, yes? Would any of you push back and not terminate both? Okay, Ryan, which one would you push back?
Well, we were confused at why they're thinking of letting Renee's friend Josie go, but they've already got a recruitment role.
Welcome to consulting. By the time you get called in, there's some interesting things in play. Yeah, they had to lay people off anyway, and these two were not team players, so they wanted to just cut out the toxicity. So they were trying to replace this payroll clerk. Yeah. What else did you consider?
Well, we were talking about, because these two have never done anything that way, I was trying to explain to them, they understand the fact that they've already thought about replacing Josie. So the process would be what they were going to offer her.
Yeah, exactly.
She's entitled to 2 weeks' notice. Are you going to stay with the minimum standard, or are you going to? The case that I was relaying is we had a girl, similar situation. There was no real basis for just cause at that point. It was going down that road, and eventually you would have been able to do it. When they come in and told me about it, I suggested that because she was only entitled to 1 week, that they actually give her the 2 weeks pay. And in our situation, once that's made and the check is drawn up, they're walked out immediately. So we were talking about you would do. Josie wouldn't have any idea at this point in time of either layoff. And the best thing to do would be to let Josie go first, so that she had no access because they've already got a concern about her, but they would lay her out without cause.
Right.
So give her severance and her notice. And give her the layoff to allow her to get her EI. Whereas if you do it with cause, she's not going to get her EI.
That's right. So lots of things to consider. Now let's talk about two very different concepts. You've got employment standards, which is the minimum requirements. And that's why I love this publication from the provincial government, Think About Layoffs, because on page 19, they give you a nice tidy, and you can find this online as well, but they tell you, look, if you work this long, you have to, minimum standards, you have to pay them this much. Now Josie, because she's worked here for 2 years, you owe her 2 weeks, according to employment standards. That is not severance. So when we talk about employment standards, that's one pot of money, and then a severance is another pot of money. And severance is determined by case law. It's determined, that's why we always say talk to your lawyer. How old is the person? What are the skill sets? What's the economy like right now? How easy is it to get a job, etc.? Like there are all these factors that have to be considered. So, skill testing question. If you're gonna terminate Renee, she's been there 18 years. According to employment standards, how many weeks notice or pay in lieu of notice do you have to pay her according to employment standards? 6. Great guess, 8. Yeah, 10 years or more, you gotta pay them 8 weeks. Now that's just employment standards. An 18-year-old company employee who's 38 years old. So in other words, she joined your organization when she was 20, so she's probably, like, this is basically all she knows, mostly. What do you think the courts might recommend? Because it used to be, it used to be about a week for every year. It's not anymore. Oh, I know, that's when I hang out with employment lawyers. We go for lunch and breakfast because I'm not gonna become a lawyer, but I wanna know what's a fair deal and what's not a fair deal. And one of the employment lawyers that we refer a lot of work to said, honestly, if you want to stay out of the courts, he's recommending a month for every year. Because then you just don't spend any money on legal fees, you almost never get challenged. Well, that's 18 months. That's a really rich package.
So 18 months plus 8 weeks, or just 18 months?
18 months plus 8 weeks.
Okay.
Guess what their lawyer, because this was not our lawyer, their lawyer recommended to the CEO, you're gonna love this. He said, give Renee 8 weeks for employment standards and 36 weeks for severance. Boom. And the CEO said, are you nuts? I'm not gonna give her 44 weeks. She's a toxic employee. And the lawyer said, do you have any written documentation where you have walked her through clear expectations through the progressive discipline process? And he said, no. Everybody knows she's a pain to work with, right? Well, that's not good enough. So then the lawyer and the CEO were kind of going at it, and they were negotiating because the CEO was going, over my dead body, am I going to pay her 44 weeks? And then the lawyer said, well, do you want to pay my legal fees then? So they ended up compromising. But that's what you're going to start to see more of, especially in a tight economy. You're going to see higher severances, especially older workers versus younger workers. So that's just about the pay side of things. What else did you discuss in this case study? What else do you need to consider here?
Yeah, I just have a question about, I think I'm considering about Josie. Is that kind of right action to let her go or not? Because she does not have any issue about her performance, and they are going to have a replacement for her.
Yeah, great question. So is it even fair to lay Josie off, right? Because it really isn't a performance issue. There's a supposition that she may or may not collude with another employee. Yeah, that's not really fair, is it? And yet at the end of the day, you can terminate anybody anytime if you have deep enough pockets. There's nothing stopping you. That's what the lawyers say, is how deep are your pockets. They have to cut jobs, and so they're looking at who are the ones that we want to keep, because those are our star players. We don't want to cut those. So they're looking at their not so star players and the jobs that are easy to replace. Payrolls in the relative terms easier to replace than some of the other positions. Yeah. Although it's funny because they're hiring to replace her. They're not actually cutting her jobs.
That's what we said. Yeah.
It's like it was not very clear. And I think this is what would distinguish a really good employer from not, is the bigger picture. It's not just the cutoff, the layoff for the now,
Yeah.
but it's the thought behind why am I doing this? Am I really doing it on unbiased, with unbiased feelings and with actions that will command this respect from those laid off, and so that I can attract the right employees when it's time to, when we want them back, or when we want the employees back.
That's right, because how you do this either builds trust or it breaks trust with the staff that stay behind, which then creates a culture that can either be supportive or be unsupportive. You got it. Yeah. So,
What did she get? What did she?
they compromised, yeah, so they didn't give her the 44 weeks. They ended up going, I believe, with 18 weeks of severance and the 8 weeks of employment standard. So what's that, 26? Yeah, not 44. Oh, the CEO was joking, right?
They gave her 26 weeks.
Yeah.
And then what happened?
She didn't sue. No, she signed the release, she was good, yeah. They
Oh,
got
I think it's just.
yeah.
Wow.
Well, the other top that you have to look at is if you didn't accept it, then you have to go to court.
Yeah.
And the chances of you getting costs back, even if you win, are low, so it's gonna cost you money. It's gonna cost company money, but it's also gonna cost the individual that was laid off money.
Guess it depends on how good the case you have.
Exactly. In this situation, the managers never did any documentation of performance management conversations, progressive discipline, so they had to do it without cause. And you're going, okay, how's that fair? Yeah.
Did they offer any kind of like outplacement services or anything like that?
No, the nature of their industry, it's not standard practice to do outplacement, although that can be a mitigating factor. Great insight, yeah, to try to help with that transition. They did extend her benefits, right? But not longer than they had to. Yeah, they didn't like her. The CEO and she didn't get along. Quite frankly, it became a bit of a personal issue. Final comments or questions about the case study? And that's just one. I could give you dozens more. Yeah. Oh. Okay, so did any of you consider human rights, Alberta human rights? They are provincially regulated, not federally regulated, so these are our. So under the Human Rights Act, which grounds might Renee's termination risk? Family status, yeah. She's a single mother. And that was one of the concerns that they had, although she had never had issues getting her work done. It was more around the interpersonal side of things. She was able to manage that. What other potential protected grounds could be at risk? Possibly gender. If she thought that her boss was picking on her, discriminating against her because she was a woman, So what do you know about human rights? I think we might have talked about this in previous workshops. How long, let's say I terminate Renee, how long does Renee have to file a complaint with the Human Rights Commission?
1 year.
Bingo, right, 1 year. And then if she does, as a manager, like the HR manager, how long do I have to respond to Renee's complaint? 21 days, so 3 weeks. Yeah, so that's why once you know, like we say, hire slow, fire fast, but like not immediate, not rashly. You want to consider all the information. You want to make sure that you're doing your due diligence. You got your information ready just in case. How many of you have had a human rights complaint that you had to manage? Anybody had to manage a human rights complaint? Yeah? Yeah, they're very time consuming, aren't they? Yeah. Years, exactly, and the files can get really thick on your desk. So we try to avoid that wherever possible, because you're either going to pay legal fees and all the time and salary to manage that human rights complaint, or just pay this employee, but recognizing that you're setting precedent. every time that you give a severance package to one person, not that they should talk because you're gonna sign a non-disclosure, you're gonna sign an NDA, a confidentiality agreement with their release.
Okay, are there any other human rights situations that you considered in Renee's scenario or Josie's scenario?
Yeah, we don't know.
Why don't you explain the source of income?
Source of income, so, great question. I cannot discriminate against you based on if you collect AISH or welfare or, you know, some form of, like, I cannot discriminate against you based, I mean, I suppose if you're a drug dealer, that might be different, that's criminal. That's where you get money, but, yeah, so I can't discriminate against you based on your source of income. Sometimes, because remember, human rights are not just for employers, they're also for landlords. So I can't not let you rent my apartment because you collect welfare, for example. Okay, so we've got a pop quiz. And this is where I'd like you to work at least in pairs. If you want to work in your table groups, that's fine, but at least in pairs. Here's the pop quiz. You should have it in front of you. Number 1, mark true or false next to each of these statements. It's relatively easy and commonplace to terminate an employee for just cause when you have proper documentation about their low performance. True or false? I'll let you read all 10 of them with your partner, and you determine whether it's true or false. You have 4 minutes. I think most of you were there, right? No. All right, let's go through them one by one. Number 1, is it easy and commonplace to terminate for just cause? True or false? False. That's right. It's considered it's becoming more uncommon, even when you have your documentation. So usually, and my experience, although we do training with managers around progressive discipline and performance management, very few managers document and have the conversations in the right way. So it's not commonplace that you actually have that documentation. And even when you do, a lot of lawyers nowadays are saying, you know what, just terminate without cause because you minimize your risk. I don't know that I agree with it or disagree with it. I'm just saying that this is pretty common, that this is the trend. Number 2, once you've made your decision to let someone go, you should always terminate him or her immediately and provide pay in lieu of notice. True or false? True, false? Oh, what's the right answer?
We were looking at it from the point of it depends on what the situation is. If it would be true if it's a case where you've got just cause and you decide to lay off because of the implications of that individual staying. But with us, we gave some of our individuals out on the shop floor a choice: 8 weeks, leave now, or work your 8 weeks after we notice. It depended on the individual, and even then it depended on the specific individual on the shop floor and what their job was. Some of them they wanted to keep for the 8 weeks because we needed their skills. Others, we didn't need their skills and they lived in watering and everything. So that one is, it can go either way depending on the circumstance.
So the key word here is always.
Yeah.
So the answer is false because you don't always. Now, yes, once you know that this person is, like, you need to exit them from your organization, the sooner you do it, the better. Because the longer you wait, the more you agonize over it, right? But it doesn't mean that you're rash about it. You can give working notice. And exactly, if they have some tacit knowledge that you need to get out of their heads, and you trust them not to sabotage the workplace, then you can give them working notice. So that's technically false because of the word always. Number 3, you should be direct and to the point and not engage in a lot of small talk at the beginning of the termination meeting. True or false? True. Yeah. Rip the Band-Aid off, don't butter them up, and, because it feels manipulative, right? So get to the point.
Directed to the point doesn't necessarily mean it should be
No,
harsh. It's just,
Yeah, don't beat around the bush, just, and you can do it in a compassionate tone, but get to the point. Number 4, it's considered best practice to start the termination meeting with a sincere apology so the employee knows it was not a personal decision but a business one. No, got a bunch of heads going this way. If you've done this, you know it's not cool. You don't want to start out with an apology because that could be misconstrued. So just get right to the point, stick to the script. Number 5, if you misinform an employee about his or her termination entitlements, so in other words, group benefit extension or conversion, pension options, accrued but unused vacation, the employee could sue on the basis of misrepresentation. True or false? True, yeah. Yeah, that's why we say take your time and make sure, so whenever we get called in to help with a termination, my colleague Barb and I always double and triple check those numbers, right? And we make sure that the manager is triple and like that they double check those numbers, because the last thing you want to do is be putting out a legal document to them that's wrong, because that could be used against you in court. Number 6, when terminating an employee, avoid saying or doing anything that would give him or her ammunition for a legal dispute. So, for example, providing a detailed explanation about why they're being let go. True. It's so easy. If you're a new supervisor, now some of you are coaching supervisors and managers, they want to give an explanation because as managers, we're taught to explain why we're doing things. In terminations, it's the opposite. Because I actually have a friend who's an executive director of a non-for-profit organization, and one time when she was doing a termination, she was there for an hour and a half, arguing with the guy about why. It's like, oh, sweetheart, no, don't do that ever again, right? That's just setting you up for a bad lawsuit. So, number 7, if you are dismissing an employee without cause and paying the minimum employment standards entitlements, then you do not need to give him, or do not need him or her to sign a release form. True or false? It's actually true. It's a tricky one. If it's just employment standards and you're not giving a severance, technically, in most cases, you don't need to have them sign off. It's a severance that they're technically signing off. It's not bad practice to do it, but you don't need to do it. Most of us don't know that. It's ideal to have an employee sign a release for termination package on the day of the termination. True or false? False. In fact, if you have them sign it right then and there, because some employees just want to get it done with, they're in shock, they're overwhelmed, they see this nice lump sum, they go, yeah, I'm ready to sign off. They can actually rethink that. They can go find a lawyer, and the lawyer says, you signed that under duress. So it's considered a good practice to give them a week. Typically it's 5 days, 7 days, something like that. I wouldn't give them any less than 3 days. But it's considered a good practice to give them 1 week. Number 9, if in doubt, it's better to escort a terminated employee out of the building than to let them go back to their desks or offices to collect their personal belongings. True. Yeah, we call this the walk of shame. And if you do it in a way that publicly sort of, it's not good, like that's not dignity. And yet, I one time counseled or coached a manager who had never done a termination before. I coached her on the phone years ago. And I said, just make sure that this employee is like supervised as they leave the organization. And so she delegated, after she did the conversation with another manager, she then delegated the manager to walk back to the desk with that employee, but then the manager walked away and their database was wiped out, and they couldn't recover it all from the server. So like that's why, because you don't know how people react when they're in shock, and they could be angry. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm saying it's a risk that you take. So. Other options are you can actually have them come back after hours and have a supervisor, when nobody's around, collect their things. You can also package them up, inventory them, send them, courier them to them. Like there are other ways that they can get their stuff.
What about like their purse and their car keys?
Yeah, so great question. What about their purse or their car keys? That's why we often do it we do it in pairs for a number of reasons. But while the one person is walking them out, the other person is grabbing their immediate needs, right?
But if money goes into another purse, like that, I don't think that's safe.
No, it's better to actually have, it depends on where their office or their cubicle is located. If it's in front of everybody and it's shameful to walk them there and to be hovering over them and watching them, I would caution you not to do that. If you can have somebody go grab their purse, somebody in a trusted position grab their purse, grab their car keys and their coat, like the things that they need to get home, then have a manager do that. The other thing that we also recommend, because there was one time I did this termination and this person she didn't look well. She looked shocked, but she physically didn't look well. So we offered her a cab ride home so that she didn't have to drive. Because what if she gets into an accident and gets hurt? The company can be held liable. So you always kind of watch to see if they're okay. It's all right, number 10, it's all right to share the reason with other staff why an employee was dismissed if the termination was for just cause. False. You could be setting yourself up for defamation claims. Yeah. Cool. So how'd you do?
You don't need to tell people. You usually don't need to tell people, know if it's a cause, what the reason is usually.
Yeah, often people know, but sometimes they don't. In larger organizations, they thought that guy was a really nice guy, but they didn't understand that there were some performance issues. And that's the tough part about being a manager. There are things you just can't share because people misunderstand. So, any questions about the quiz? Let's look at some do's and don'ts. Why don't we fire somebody on Friday? Sorry, Erica? Well, and so it could be. Yeah, so I do a little bit of work in human resources in the mental health area, and you don't know what's going on in people's lives. If they're teetering on the edge and now losing their job is that last straw that's pushing them over, do they have access to resources like counselors and doctors and so on the weekend? So it's considered that better practice not to do it right before a weekend, and it's really good practice not to do it right before a long weekend, right, when nobody's available. So we often will recommend that we do it the first thing in the week, like a Monday or a Tuesday. Depends. Sometimes you're limited when you can do it. What are some other best practices? Because many of you have done terminations. What have you learned that is important to consider? Please don't do it by yourself. Always have a witness. Why?
You said something that you did.
And he said, she said situation, you got it. Always seek legal advice. Every single time we get called in to help with a termination, we won't work with a client unless they've actually sought legal counsel, because they know more about the nature of the working relationship, and we can't advise them. This is where HR butts up against legal. We can't advise them on the severance. We often get asked, well, how much should I pay them? Well, I can tell you what employment standards minimum is, but I can't tell you what case law is. That's not my job. That's your lawyer's job. And if they have not sought legal counsel, then and they want us to help them with the termination, then we make it very clear that we are not responsible if there's a lawsuit, because we advise them to get legal. Yeah, because you don't know what's fair. That release, in the release, y'all know what the release is for, right? It's basically the employee saying, I'm not going to pursue any legal action against you. I feel that what you've offered me is fair. The other thing that we encourage is included in that release is a reminder, verbally as well as in written form, about confidentiality and non-disclosure. Hopefully your employment contract when they came into your organization had a confidentiality and an NDA, right? But I've also seen non-competes, right? That they will not compete with your organization. So if you didn't do it on the front end, make sure you do it on the back end. And even if you've done it on the front end, remind them that they have an obligation. And I often encourage them to have that in their release package as well. Don't dismiss anybody who's on medical leave or maternity leave. I can't tell you how many small businesses, they say, well, she's off on
mat leave, can I terminate her now, or do I wait till she comes back? Okay.
I have one question. In case that a person she has like a 1 year contract. After that she's kind of pregnant. Then people do not the employer does not renew the contract with her. Is that okay?
Is it an employment agreement? So is she bound under employment standards because she's an employee and we're taking source deductions and remitting them to CRA? Or is she a contractor? Because if she's a contractor and not a contract employee, you have different legislation that can yeah, so you want to confirm, because if it's an employment agreement that's for a term, she's still an employee, then employment standards is relevant. But if she's a contractor, it's not relevant. Okay, great question. Okay. So that being said, it's now everything's online, but in the olden days, I used to have tip sheets, the Alberta labor information, the tip sheets, because if you work in construction, for example, there are some different considerations, etc. So there are lots of free resources available to you. And lastly, some termination best practices on page 4. For those who have never done a termination before, and if you're coaching managers who have never done it before, you can kind of walk them through this linear process. Before you actually sit down and terminate the employee, know the facts, collect the data, calculate all the monies owing, and so you may need to work with your payroll or / HR person. Seek legal counsel, if I haven't emphasized that enough. Draft your termination letters and forms and have somebody double check them. Use a release form if severance is offered. And remember, that's where you might want to add the NDA, the confidentiality, and or the non-compete. Plan the meeting. Where are we going to hold it? Try to be as confidential and private as possible. I've even seen people hold it off-site so that their employees, they're not embarrassed. But it has to be private. Review all documentation before the meeting, including benefits. It's so funny, it's common sense, but there are times where the manager goes in and hasn't even read the letter, right? And then they're asked questions and they're caught off guard, and that's just not a smooth process. You're going to rip this Band-Aid off. You're not going to peel it slowly and make it painful. Stick to the script. Don't argue. Don't defend your decision, and don't apologize. Have backup at the meeting, 2 people. Collect company property, like proxy cards, swipe cards, keys, Visa cards, laptops, cell phones, etc. If you have to escort the person out to prevent sabotage, just try to do it maybe through the back door, where it's not in front of everybody. Disconnect access. So this is why the planning is important, because I've seen it where HR didn't communicate with IT. And so then that employee went home and they were ticked right off, and they had access to their email and they replied all and they sent it. And so just make sure that all that stuff is organized and coordinated so that you can just press a button and they no longer have access to their email. And there's a graceful response when people reply to them. This individual is no longer working with us, you can now contact so. Inventory their personal belongings and courier it to the employee if you were not able to let them gather. One lady that we did recently, bless her heart, she was a bit of a hoarder and she had all these her whole desk, it'll only take 10 minutes, she said. Well, it was about an hour and a half Barb was standing there because she had pictures and she had all of her personal stuff was stuffed in company folders. It was weird and unusual. You don't see that very often. So once Barb was there, she thought, oh, what do I do? Stop in the middle of this? Because it was in a private area. So it just took a lot longer than it should have. Communicate to staff changes. So that actually should be orchestrated where you bring the group together and do a bit of a town hall. Hey, just so you know, this is what's happened. Because if it's just an email, a clinical cold email, so-and-so is no longer with us, that just leaves a lot of question marks in the minds of everybody who's left behind. And when we leave people behind, they have to go through a grief process. Change is about letting go. And so I'm not gonna talk too much about this because I know Claudia that's exactly where she's gonna head with it shortly. But understanding that some people will be rejoicing that you let that person go, possibly, and some people will be curious, well, why? I had no idea that there were problems. And some people will be downright ticked at you because that was their best friend at work. And so the more that you help your managers who are doing the termination, or if it's you, the more you think about the relationships that exist amongst the staff and consider how you could get ahead of that, the better. You can't go in there and tell them all kinds of reasons, but you can let them know that if they have any questions, they can come talk to you. And that you're going to protect confidentiality, but you will answer whatever questions you can. So with that said, what questions do you have? Did you learn something new? Yeah? Are you jumping out of bed tomorrow morning saying, I just want to practice these skills? Sorry, I'm just kidding. No, I mean, this is not something that we don't go into any human resources to fire people. Very, very few HR people enjoy this part of the job. But when you do it with dignity and you follow a process that has respect, then you've done your job well. So thank you for playing.
I actually would like to go back to something you said right at the beginning.
Okay.
When you were being very careful not to disclose who the client was, you made an allusion about the fact that this company was going to probably be going through another wave due to skills that would no longer be in demand. And the reason that I would like to go through that is because of what we see, and we talked about it at the last session when we talked about technology and the impact of technology in the workplace and what's happening with automation and artificial intelligence and where we're going as a labor market. In this particular example, is it what you foresee? Is it this kind of continuum that these skills are becoming obsolete or will become obsolete because they're going to be replaced by other ways of doing business?
That's a good question, because that's a long cycle.
Yes.
You know, if you consider what the World Wide Web has done to librarians' lives, right? Think about it. When I was a kid, you went to the library to get the encyclopedia to do your book report. Now everything's online, and yet we still have librarians. Their roles have changed, and they're actually more consultants, and they offer. So while I would have predicted librarians would be out of jobs, that's not actually true. So sometimes the jobs actually change, and that's where we get creative. Do we have to lay people off, or can we look at job enrichment, or offer services, and that's where you can be consultative from an HR perspective. But there are jobs that are going to be, over time with technology, absolutely no longer relevant. But that's why we have long working notices. When the organization knows that maybe an area of their business is no longer going to be required, we seek legal counsel and we figure out what's a reasonable period. Because that is also needed.
And so it's going to be very interesting tomorrow when the federal government releases the new budget, because if you watched the news last night, there is going to be an enormous focus on skills retraining, training, and new skills. And certainly from what we all see, that's where we're going to have to put our attention, because otherwise we're going to go into another wave of unfortunate losses. So thank you very much, Juliana. No questions for Juliana? Let's take a break, and when we come back, thank you all.